Hey guys, welcome to our 6-week program, How to Write a Pilot in 6 Weeks. This is like a crash course in writing pilot episodes for TV shows. My name's Connor. I'm going to be hosting this bootcamp as well as the feature bootcamp, which we just started a new session of that runs for 8 weeks and takes you all the way from idea to finished draft of a brand new screenplay. Let's dive into our slideshow for today. If you're having microphone issues, we have just a couple tips for you. The main thing is going to be make sure to check that gray icon in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. That is going to be what mutes you or unmutes you. And if you see that a red microphone, that means we've had to server mute you, perhaps because we've been hearing some background sound like dogs barking or things like that in the background of your mic. So make sure to keep that muted unless you're called on and speaking in the class. Script Camp. We are a screenwriting community focused on taking you from concept to idea. Taking your concept from idea to first draft to more polished script with lots of free classes, events, and workshops. Some are paid for VIP members, and some are going to be public, like this one. This is just the week 0 of this class, though, so if you want to continue past this one, make sure you are signing up for the membership. Skill Camp is the name of our company. We have a couple other servers as well, and we're adding more currently. So we have added WordCamp most recently, where we are running a novel writing boot camp, which is the biggest class we've ever done so far. Runs for 12 weeks until the end of the year on Saturdays from 12 to 2. Skill Camp is a non-profit in which we are going to be adding new classes with free ones and promotional events as well soon. All that is included with your Script Camp membership. So by signing up for Script Camp, you get access to everything else we have here. It's really just you're getting membership to Skill Camp. So come by our different servers, Film Camp, Creator Camp, and say hi. We have upcoming classes there too. My name's Connor. I've been writing full-length scripts for about 10, 11 years. Moved to LA in 2015, got signed for the first time in 2017, and have been a working screenwriter and TV writer ever since. I wrote for Creepshow on the Shudder Network, and I have a thriller script set up in town currently. I teach the boot camps in the weekly Writers Lab. Here's what's coming up. So Feature Bootcamp started on the 14th. That was 2 days ago, so that's going to run for the next 8 weeks. It's not too late to join if you're interested in writing a movie. Script Analysis Bootcamp is brand new. That starts on Thursday and runs for 6 weeks. Thursday the 20th, that would be. So that's going to be focusing on how to break down and analyze and figure out which parts of a script are working and which parts are not. TV Pilot's going to be Sundays from 11 to 1 Pacific time, and all these times are in Pacific time. Novel Bootcamp is Saturdays at 12. We have some one-off classes coming up. Painting with lighting for cinematography. That's going to be on Film Camp on the 22nd. And later that same day, we'll have Lighting Home Studio on Creator Camp. We also have a bunch of groups that you can see here, so if you're interested in starting or joining one of these groups, then you're free to do so. I am doing a guest speaking spot at the fantasy group today at 5 o'clock. We also have script swaps Tuesdays at 5, table reads Sundays at 2, so you don't need to be a paid member to participate in these public events, but as a member you will get things like script coins, which you can use to enter your own script in these table reads and get a read for your script along with feedback from the community. We have a shorts contest we just announced as well, so you can write a horror script up to 5 pages long, enter it at scriptcamp.net/Halloween, and you can win things like an entire year of unlimited script camp, consultations, a year of Arc Studio Pro, which is a great screenwriting software, Filmocracy Premium Festival access, and free submission to Killer Shorts, which is another contest that is centered on Script Hive, which is another server that we work with. We also will have prizes like hoodies and backpacks and mouse pads and things like that, all that great merchandise stuff. So feel free to enter scriptcamp.net/Halloween before the 31st with a industry standard formatted, please, horror short between 1 to 5 pages. All right, so what are these boot camps? We're going to take you from idea to first draft using this very step-by-step practical weekly method, these 2-hour classes. We run 8 weeks for feature, 6 weeks for TV. We've run other classes in the past like short film or pitch boot camp or horror thriller boot camp, which have been shorter and are more like 4 weeks to 6 weeks. And you can find recordings of all of our previous classes in the video library as a member. Here's the schedule. So we start with week 0. This is going to be looking at premise, logline, and just an overview of everything. So this is a really huge slideshow that sometimes I will skip around in and mix things up a little bit just depending on the needs of the class. We will have time to workshop your logline, though, so if you have some ideas of what is the show that I want to work on, you're going to want to be boiling down what is the one sentence I would use to express what this show is about. That's called our logline. It's the one-sentence expression of the premise in written form. So I would be working on that up until we get to the point in class where we'll be sharing those, which is about halfway through. So in about 40, what is it, 11:15 right now, 11:11. So around the noon mark for Pacific time, we're going to be posting and sharing just what you have of a logline, even if it's not quite finished or it's not complete, or you're not sure which one you want to go with or choose, then that is a good time to just get that early feedback on that. So I would have your Google Doc open this whole time and just be fiddling around with the logline as you have it, trying to find a version of it that works. If you're not sure what a logline even is or how to even write one, we will be getting into that today as well. But basically, it's just the one sentence that says, here's my show, here's the main character, here's what they're doing, here's what this is all about. Next week, we will look at why this story, and we're going to try to think of some reasons why we're choosing this. It might just be because this is what I think I can write, and that's an okay reason when you're just starting out, or maybe there's some reason you think this is particularly a relevant idea in today's culture for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. We should just have some rationale for why we're choosing the ideas that we're choosing. And you should almost always, when you're just starting out, be writing the kind of stuff that you want to see or the kind of stuff that you watch. So that can be a fine reason why to choose a story as well. So you're going to be finalizing that series and pilot logline by the end of that class, hopefully next week, and filling out your sketchbook in the meantime. Week 2 is on outlining. We're going to figure out what happens in our pilot episode. It doesn't have to be a full list of every single scene, but just the major events in the correct order. Next week after that is on scene cards, which we're going to expand that story beats outline into a full paragraph for every single scene, so we know what happens on every page of the pilot by the end of week 3. Week 4 is when we start on pages. So first act, week 4, second act, week 5, third act, week 6. It's going to require you to write between 10 to 20 pages a week, 10 if you're doing a half-hour show, 20 if you are writing a full hour-long show. So you are a little bit incentivized to pick a shorter format because we just have such a limited time. If this is one of your first scripts you've written, consider picking a half hour instead of a full hour-long show. It will be easier for you. First draft will be complete. Oh, my arm's in the way. By December 4th. Any questions on the schedule before we go any further? All right, if there's no questions, we'll keep going. Go ahead.
All right. Hi. So I was just wondering, for each act, I see there's a total of 3 acts for the pilot. Is that right?
That's right.
And so, is one act comprised of just, I guess, one interaction, or how do you define an act? I guess I'm just trying to figure out how much content to put in each act.
Sure. So an act is like a in Western style storytelling, we often are writing in 3-act structure. A story divided into 3 acts is sort of like beginning, middle, and end. So in terms of a TV pilot, a half-hour show, 10 minutes for the first act, 10 minutes for the second act, 10 minutes for the third act. It's like, imagine a commercial break in between each of those, and that basically sums up to a full episode. In terms of an hour-long show, we actually are splitting it up into 5 acts. I know this is a little confusing, but you can still imagine 5 acts as beginning, middle, and end, right? So that it sort of is still 3-act format, even though it's broken up a little more in, like, it's just divided more because there's more commercials in an hour-long show. So yeah, it's like, imagine it's the first third, the second third, and the final third. But the most important one is the middle. The second act, we always say, is the show, more or less. So we really emphasize a lot of work on that second act beforehand and making sure you have a really full second act before you start. But yeah, in terms of TV, first act is going to be 10 minutes per act in half hour, and it's going to be like 12 minutes per act in full hour. But just sort of imagine that, like, you're sort of mashing together acts 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then like part of 4 and 5. Hours is just a little confusing like that. But hopefully, does that make sense?
That really helps. Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure, no problem. In terms of movies also have acts, but we don't usually write start of act 1, end of act 1 in a movie. You just kind of, like, they're a little bit more intangible. In a movie, we just sort of figure out where they begin and end. But in a TV show, you actually have to label them. It's like start of act 1, end of act 1. Like, essentially, commercial comes next. Hope that just answers the basics of that question. But we'll get much more into all of that today.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions on the schedule or anything on this list?
Um, can I ask you, so with, I don't really understand like outlining,
Okay.
like, and beats when outlining a story or, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll talk all about that in this class. I think anyone can learn this stuff. Week 2 is when we really get into structure, so that would be on our October 30th class. The one right before our Halloween is when we will talk about that the most. But we'll touch on it today, and we'll sort of, in the overview, we will just give you the basics on it. But yeah, come to the week 2 if you want to get like a really extensive class on that.
Okay.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions? All right, let's continue for now. So, how to join the bootcamp? You can buy it on its own at scriptcamp.net/classes, or you can start your unlimited membership trial with Skillcamp at scriptcamp.net/membership. You can also buy yearly for as low as $29 a month, and you get full access to every event, every class, every workshop, everything we do on these servers. If you have not yet signed up but you want to, you can vote yes in the poll that will be posted in the chat shortly. You can just click that number 1 to indicate that you want to sign up, and then you'll get instant access to all of our private chat channels and all of the content on Discord. Here's what's included in different types of membership. Unlimited is probably the best one to go with because it includes absolutely everything we do on here. Basic is just $9 a month, though, and is going to give you just those Wednesday, Thursday classes. It's still 8 classes a month, and that's going to include private channels and access to the video library, so you can still watch recordings of all of the classes, just it will exclude boot camps and Writer's Lab. Unlimited gives you access to not only the video library, but also big discounts on consultations and proofreads. And you can get these things we call script coins, which you can use to get a reading of one of your scripts and get a feedback from the community on it. We also have a coaching tier, which you can see here, if you're interested in more one-on-one work. All right, last, you can go to scriptcamp.net/coverage to get a set of notes on your script from me. This is not included in the bootcamp because we normally have way too many people to get individual full reads and notes on every single script. So if you want to get that, as a member, you will get $100 off, and it comes with a full set of notes and also half an hour call to go over the main points from those and answer any of your questions that you have. Scriptcamp.net/coverage, you can buy that. All right, so let's start with introduction and discussion. You can feel free to weigh in and tell us about yourself. What are some of your goals as a writer? Have you written a lot of scripts before, or is this your very first one? Is there some genre that you really want to write, or some TV show you want to write something just like that? Or maybe you just aren't sure what you want to work on yet? Feel free to anyone unmute or tell us in the text. Tell us about your goals and what you want to learn, what you hope to accomplish.
Hi, this would be my first script writing. I have written some short stories that I've self-published, but I actually had a dream about this TV show, and I, woke up in the middle of the night and started writing it. So this has kind of taken me by surprise, and my goals, I guess. There's no immediate rush to do this. I just want to sort of do it right. I don't know if you'd like me to tell you about what the idea for the show is now, but
Sure, go ahead.
yeah, I kind of envision it like a dramedy of sorts. It's kind of like My Big Fat Greek Wedding meets like Sex in the City sort of thing. Oh, actually, I do have my log line if you'd like me to read it.
Maybe save it for in 40 minutes. We'll be posting them, and I can give you
Okay.
full feedback on it if you want to do it then.
Okay, sure.
But thanks for sharing. That's awesome. I think if you had a dream about it, that means you got to write it, right?
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
clearly your brain wants you to do it.
Yes, the unconscious is tapping.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? Feel free to weigh in.
So, so with my experience, I have written um, um, 2 pilot drafts for my show, but I'm really struggling to. I'm trying to write another pilot, but I'm really struggling with like everything in there. So um yeah, and the idea is like it's a crime type show. So yeah, so I think this would help me with yeah with the show.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, and if you've written a couple drafts before, maybe you'll have a little bit of familiarity with the formatting and software and stuff, which will give you a little bit of a head start. So that's all great, and hopefully we can help you out with organization and structure, I think is where a lot of people struggle with this starting out, and that's what we're going to really focus on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's see. Trisha says, I wrote a play. I'm interested in getting the ball rolling on a TV script that's a mixture of drama and comedy, loosely based on some themes in my life. Great. Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty clear idea of what you want to do. That's awesome. Comedy, drama. Yep, we usually call those dramedies. That's very popular nowadays, so you can absolutely write that. We're open to any genre, any type of script. There's just a couple of things we'll recommend that you be cautious about, things like time travel. But beyond that, beyond our words of caution, you can totally write whatever you want in the course. Watch, like 5 people now will be like, I'm going to do time travel just because you said it was hard. And then you're going to regret your life. Watch, you'll regret it. Every time I'm like, don't do it. Don't do time travel. And they're like, well, I can do time. And I'm like, no, you can't. Anyone else want to tell us what your goals are, what you hope to achieve?
I'm still, I started maybe 1 or 2 weeks back, but I started going through the videos of the TV Pilot Bootcamp to start working on this horror comedy that I have planned, and I think it would be better if I followed along with other people in this. So
sure. Yeah, do you work well with the deadlines? Does that help you a lot?
Yeah, it helps a lot more if I have like a deadline.
Right. I think a lot of folks feel the same, and that's why the boot camps are useful, because it gives you that sense of accountability, and I need to get that done by that day, and everyone's in the same boat as you, so you can get support from people who are, struggling with the same kind of stuff. Everyone's roughly at the same point in their script. It's always okay if you fall behind a little bit, but a lot of folks have found it useful to just have that structure to the writing process. Roger says, I concur, deadlines rock. Okay, great. Well, yeah, we've got 6 big deadlines for you coming up. I guess the only real sort of deadlines are like the week 1, week 4, act 1, week 5, act 2, week 6, act 3. Before then, it's okay if you fall a little bit behind, but yeah, we try to approach this with a strong sense of organization. And if nothing else, like even if you don't end up with a great script at the end of this, which you probably won't, and that's okay, more than anything, this is trying to teach you how to organize and approach writing a pilot. Not so much, don't worry about like if you end up with anything amazing at the end of it. This is like going to the gym for writing. It's not like you're not digging for a treasure chest, you're just going to the gym. Anyone else? Or anything you guys are watching lately that you've really enjoyed, maybe? I'm watching House of the Dragon, which has 2 episodes left, and it's getting quite intense. It's pretty great. Anyone else watching something they're enjoying?
Love House of the Dragon.
I am fully Team Alicent, and I have been since the beginning, is all I'm going to say. I don't know why everyone's like, she's the worst. No, she's great.
I'm Rhaenyra. I'm Team Rhaenyra.
All right, well, war has been declared, sir. Or should I say, Your Grace. Anyone else?
I've been rewatching American Horror Story with my aunt.
With your
And
aunt,
it's been,
okay. How's
yeah,
that?
It's been pretty good. Awkward at times because it's American Horror Story, but
Mhm.
you know, it's a good show.
Sure, I've only seen a little bit of it, but I love horror shows. I wrote on one, as obviously on the same network, so there you go. Artemis says, can you briefly go over the difference in approach, kind of like advantages or disadvantages of writing a movie and writing for a TV show? That's a great question, Artemis. Sure. Advantages of writing a movie. You get to write the whole story. A pilot is not a complete story. It's like, it has a beginning, middle, and end on its own and should sort of stand on its own, but it's just not the whole thing, and you have to sort of leave room for it to go places that you don't even know. Like, potentially it could be years of entertainment. So a movie is more like you actually get to write to the end, and that is the entire thing. That's the whole thing. And to me, that makes it much more appealing nowadays than writing these sort of... A pilot is just like, first of all, only one small piece of what would be a much larger work. And second of all, pilots just are less likely to get picked up and get made as shows than movies are, and neither of them are that likely to get picked up and made, because a TV show costs monumentally much more than a movie to produce. And so the people who are actually getting to make and run shows are a much smaller number. Like, most of the time writing a pilot, you're going to end up with trying to use this as a writing sample to get a manager that you will then use to try to get you to pitch to showrunners to maybe get a staff writing job in one of their rooms. So it's not like you're writing this show thinking it's actually going to get made. Most of the time, this is like a writing sample for a portfolio of somebody who wants to work on staffs as a TV writer. So that's the big thing. The hugest difference in my mind between movies and TV is that we're actually, with movies, writing the complete product as opposed to a TV show where you're kind of writing like a sample. We're going to do fireworks at 11 in the morning in the day still. So many fireworks. My neighborhood. I don't get it. Still going. Anyway, that's the major difference between film and TV, though. The other major difference is that TV is very staff-based. Like, you go to the office every day, you have bosses. You have multiple bosses, and like with features, you still have bosses too, but it's not as corporate. It's not like as, you aren't going into an office and working on stuff with other people. It's less collaborative. It still is collaborative, but it's less collaborative than writing a TV show. And in TV, you can be working for years and maybe, in theory, only get depending on how your room is set up, you might only get a few lines or a few jokes into some episodes if it's a comedy show. Or even if you get a full credit to yourself, you're still going to be overwritten by the showrunner. So you won't really get full control in TV until many, many years into the process. With movies, you still don't really have full control either, but it's just even less in TV. You're part of a much bigger machine in TV. So that's a lot of the basics there. Any questions on that?
So, I guess because I'm a little... Well, now that you explained all that, I'm leaning more towards movie.
Okay.
But I'm guessing I will sign up for the membership. Once you get to see my material, I'd also appreciate your opinion on what you envision it being better, in what format.
Sure. Yeah, and the thing is that, like, to be a screenwriter or TV writer, if you have just like one thing that you want to make, I usually recommend that you write it as if you want to have full control over it, you should write it as a book or a comic or something, or a play, something that's actually legally considered a work of art, because then you'll just maintain much more control over it. If you want to maintain full control over a story or an idea, or it's like really important to you to do it your way, you shouldn't write it as a pilot or as a feature script for the most part, unless you're going to pay for it yourself. But we can talk more about the career-specific stuff as we go through this.
Yeah, okay.
Hopefully that just gives you some basic answers, though. Anyone else want to weigh in? Tell us about your goals or questions you have before we continue. All right, let's keep going. So, pilot finished in 6 weeks. Let me move out of the way. Whoop. Will it be good? No, probably not. Is anyone's first painting worthy of being put into a museum? No. And this is a very unintuitive art form that most people don't grow up reading pilots, or most people have never really read that many, if any, at all. And so there's so many kind of quirks and rules here and things that you need to know that are really only learnable by reading a ton of pilots and writing a bunch of pilots. You will have to, make no mistake, write a lot of pilots before you start to come up with anything even approaching the level of professional. It takes most people an average of 10 years of doing this before they start to get meetings. So don't expect your first draft to be good. Move beyond the idea that anything needs to be good before you can be satisfied from it. And also, it's this weird case in screenwriting and TV writing where you have to sort of break that normal cycle, the art cycle we might call it, where it's like, conceive of an idea, execute that idea, share that idea with people, everybody claps, yay, and they hang it up on the wall or whatever, and then they move on to the next thing. Most of the time with screenwriting, it will be you work for a long time on it and you get only negative notes. You did a bunch of things wrong you didn't even know were wrong. A bunch of mistakes were made that you weren't even aware of that could be made, and you will be very discouraged if you expect everything to be good right away or just to get good feedback right away. It's tough in that way. Like, you're mostly going to be performing in empty rooms, so to speak, for quite a while of this. This is not an easy job. This is an uphill climb at every step of the way, and you should try to get used to that and try to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy writing at all, this may not be the best idea to force yourself to do. It's like such a demanding and draining and difficult thing that I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you really love it. And if you feel discouraged by any of these things, you can take that as like the first sort of screening test, right? Like, if I hear all that and I still want to do this, well, that means you're in the right place, right? Because if you are aware of the challenges that will come with this and you still want to be here, then that's the right kind of sign. It's not going to be fun the whole time, and you should understand that the main thing that distinguishes people from the ones who will continue and succeed at this versus the ones that will give up is if you're willing to continue past the point where it's any fun. So don't expect it to be constant inspiration. Like, you're not gonna always have that amazing feeling of it flying through the pages and words are flowing like butter or whatever. Sometimes it's gonna be really hard work and you have to really chisel this thing out, and then you have to do it again for the next one. So try to get used to some of those ideas and just look at this as improvement. Each script you write is like lifting weights. You're lifting those dumbbells and building those muscles. We're not digging for a treasure chest. So I would right now open up your Google Docs and make a new document, and we're going to call this Sketchbook. And you're going to be working with this throughout the rest of class and throughout the rest of writing this pilot. So this is going to be a blank document. There's nothing fancy about this. And at the top, you're going to call it Name of Show and Sketchbook. If you don't yet know the name of the show that you want to write, or you don't even know what you want to write yet, that's okay. Just call it Pilot Sketchbook. And at the top of that, you're going to want to leave spaces, or you're going to just write these things so you can start to fill these things out, hopefully throughout the course of this class. We're going to start with title, next genre, we have format and time slots, comps, that stands for comparables. It's going to be, you pick other shows that are kind of like your show in an effort to explain what yours is. Maybe you're like, it's like Friends meets, what are we going to combine Friends with? Friends meets, Lost. Oh, that sounds kind of good. Friends meets Lost would be like a sitcom on a deserted island where there's mysteries, right? So you're trying to sort of suggest what the show is like by picking two things that are kind of like it. And you can think of it in terms of like the world of the first thing, but with the style or the approach of the second thing. There's not really an exact science to it, but try to just think of some comps, things that you're trying to make a show sort of like that. We have series logline and we have pilot logline, which are two separate loglines that a show needs. These are going to be that one sentence expression of the idea, in which case the series is going to have a more broad logline that explains these are the types of situations that the characters will be getting in all of the episodes, and the pilot logline is going to be explaining what happens just in that one pilot episode. We will get to each of these things in turn, but I would just write these things down now at the top of your sketchbook. The sketchbook is not literally for sketching pictures unless you really want to, but it's for gathering of ideas, and you're going to gather all your ideas for lines of dialogue and characters, locations, research info such as pictures or links to videos or articles, anything like that. That's all going to go into the sketchbook, so you're going to be coming back to this document quite a lot. Any questions on sketchbook before we start? Or before we move to the next slide, I should say. Okay, we'll keep going. I will recommend heavily that you folks use Google Docs for this. It's much easier to share those documents with others and to collaborate on them rather than using Microsoft Word docs or things like that. The only documents we should be sharing in ScriptCamp are going to be Google Docs links or PDF files. Okay, let's continue. So, ground rules. Don't do true stories, anthologies, or adaptations. You should just be picking ideas that you feel like you can pull off in 6 weeks. And all of these things are going to be these are all elements that add a lot of extra work, research, and time. If you're doing a true story, for instance, you might be like, I need to get it just right. I need to do all the interviews. I need to actually go to the locations from the story and do it justice. Try not to pick something that you feel like you have to do justice. You're writing it in 6 weeks, and if it's your first pilot, you need to just learn the basics of how to do this. And what does a scene feel like? And, like, how long should a scene be? What does a satisfying scene out feel like? You know, all of these just really technical craft things that you're not really going to learn until you do this yourself. Don't pick something that you feel like you need to do justice to. Time travel. Just trust me, don't do it. Probably don't do a historical unless you have some kind of background research in that time period already or on that specific story already. Maybe some folks want to try. I'm not going to, like, this is my sort of lightest rule. I'm just going to say it's a caution and a recommendation not to do a historical, but if you really want to do one, then go ahead. Beware of things like clones, parallel universes, or stories that involve multiple timelines and extensive use of montage and flashbacks, unless your show is sort of like, well, even if it is fundamentally about those sorts of things, like imagine a show like True Detective, for instance, where like about 60% of the show is some sort of flashback or occurs at different points in the timeline. Those are exceedingly difficult to write. If you're new at this, pick something straightforward. It doesn't have to be a boring drama about a guy who wants to get a sandwich from a store and then eats the sandwich. It doesn't have to be about nothing. It just needs to be easier for you to manage in 6 weeks. So try not to pick something that involves lots of jumping around in time, lots of different copies of the same characters, or any of these sort of complex sci-fi ideas that are just really difficult to realize on the page. You want to probably pick something that you know that you can actually accomplish. You know that you can achieve it. But it is a good time to pick something kind of unusual or different, some like wacky idea. Even if you think it would never get made, like this is a good time in your careers to be just experimenting and trying stuff. So none of these things we're not gonna like tell you can't write any of these things. These are just things that we've noticed people really struggle with in the past before. You should do whatever you're most excited about. What else? So get used to sharing your idea at early stages with me and with everyone. If you want to be a TV writer, that means you're going to have to write on staffs where you have to share very early pitches or versions of ideas all the time and be ready to hear them get totally shot down. So we have a very supportive, constructive atmosphere on ScriptCamp. Nobody's going to be mean about these things, but just get used to hearing feedback, even if you aren't going to always agree with it. Like sometimes you just get dumb, bad notes. My notes are always perfect, but you get the idea that sometimes you get notes that you don't understand or don't agree with, and you have to get used to that as somebody going on the track to be a professional TV writer. This course and the whole Discord server is intended to be putting people on the path to becoming Hollywood professionals, and that means that we're trying to prepare you in as many ways as we can. To that end, you should also be ready to use your real name after the week 1 of the class. If you really, really, really don't want to use your real name, you can use a middle name or a nickname or something like that. But just don't be using screen names. You're not using screen names in the industry, and you're not going to get hired to a TV staff using, Hello Kitty 420 as your name. So you gotta use your real name after the first week. For today, you can keep whatever you want, though. Here's some basics on TV writing. So in the US, TV is usually written by staffs. These consist of staff writers at the lowest level, all of whom are overseen by a hierarchy of writing producers. Producers are writers in TV, just to be clear. All of whom are overseen by the showrunner, who's the boss of everything, is the head of writing and head of production. They are the heart of the show, and they are the show. The showrunner is the most important person on any show. The number of staffed writers can vary anywhere from 2 or 3 unlimited series all the way up to 15 or more on big comedy or late-night shows. Comedy rooms are bigger than drama rooms. Spec, S-P-E-C, spec stands for speculative, and it refers to several separate, distinct things. In features, a spec is a script that you've written on your own that has not been commissioned, that is not an adaptation of anything, or it could be a spec adaptation of something in the public domain, but it's a script that you wrote with the express purpose of getting work with it, or getting reads and meetings, maybe trying to get it made. It was not commissioned by anyone, though. In TV, a spec episode is like a fan fiction episode of an existing show that is currently on the air and is usually in its 2nd to 4th season. You almost never need these nowadays. You only really use these to enter a couple fellowships, and maybe a couple showrunners say they still like to read these, but generally writing original pilots is the way you start a career in TV writing nowadays in 2022. A spec pilot is usually just called a pilot. So this is going to be an original first episode of a theoretical show that does not exist and almost certainly will never exist. You're going to use that as a writing sample to get reads and meetings and to enter contests early on in your career to try to get a manager. Once you have a couple spec pilots, you can consider that to be your portfolio, and your manager will send those to showrunners who are staffing to try to get you meetings to get staffed. Questions on any of these just TV writing basics? I guess I have one more slide on it, so let me actually do one more slide before I take questions. So, two major ways to get started as a TV writer. One is by you work up the assistant track, and the other track is you come in from outside. So, coming in as an assistant means you're going to probably have to start with an internship. You almost certainly have to be in LA or go to LA for this. You're going to spend years working your way up as various assistant positions, moving from office PA. Hopefully, after a couple years, you can move to writer's PA. Then after a couple years of that, maybe writer's assistant or showrunner's assistant. And then after that, if they really like you, they will read your episodes and maybe consider staffing you. But it can take years, even after you are a showrunner's assistant, in order to get a read and to fully get staffed. There's more security in this version, and if you like working with teams, and you like having lots of bosses, and you like getting people coffee and lunch orders, this is the approach for you, but you probably have to be in LA for it. And I can't help way too much with this just because I did not take this approach myself. The other track is just get obscenely good at writing pilots outside of just on your own, as well as other things like plays or books or stand-up or web shows or features or anything else just to build out your portfolio. There's really no point in getting meetings if you're not already a great writer, so don't worry way too much about getting the meetings until you have a fantastic portfolio of 3 to 5 incredible pilots. But at that point, you will be able to get a manager through contests, fellowships, networking, and other accolades. Have your manager submit your portfolio during staffing season, and then you have to nail those staffing meetings. So that's kind of the two major approaches here. Joining a staff means being in the same room as this group of people for 12 hours a day for several months, so you need to be good in a room, and this includes social skills. You need to have excellent social skills to be a TV writer. Extroverted, friendly, good at receiving feedback gracefully and providing it just as gracefully, able to quickly assess what the issues are in someone else's writing and come up with solutions rather than just being the person that always says no. This is a very, very social job. Being nice and presentable and kind and respectful will give you a huge leg up, and you need to have a very thick skin because not all of your employers will be super patient or kind or any of these things that we hope that they will be, but you gotta just stick it out. So plan to move to LA if you want to be a TV writer in the US. All right, now I'll take questions on TV writing basics if anybody wants to ask those. Any questions here?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So with moving to LA, is it essential to, if you want to shoot in USA or sell a script?
To shoot in the USA or to sell a script? Well, I mean, you have to be in the US to shoot in the US. Of course, just you have to be there to shoot something here. To sell a script, no, you can sell a script from anywhere. For a feature, especially, as if you want to be a feature writer, you can live kind of wherever you want, but you have to be ready to come to LA to take meetings and to do things like that. It's going to be more difficult outside of the US, and outside of Los Angeles, it will always be harder. So, and to write for a TV show, you pretty much do have to be here, yes. But you could sell a script for a movie or for something like that from outside of Los Angeles and then come here to take meetings for it. It's just going to make your life much harder.
Oh, okay. It's fine.
Other questions? All right, let's keep going. So, why would you write a pilot? Well, because you want to be a professional TV writer, because you want to just become more skilled at this craft for some reason. Maybe you want to direct a web series yourself or something like that, or maybe you just want to write as a fun hobby for personal enjoyment. But this group, and these classes are intended to put you on the path to doing this professionally. But don't worry way too much if any one script is any good. You don't have to care if you're making a brick road. If any individual brick is a masterpiece or is any really good at all, you have a bunch more bricks to lay down. So I would think of it in these terms. I know I have a bunch of different separate metaphors. It's a gym, it's a road, but you get the idea. It's don't count on any one script being the one thing that moves your career forward. You have to build those muscles before you can start to make better roads. But just try to enjoy the process. So let's look at the process here. Five steps over 6 weeks. 1, we start with logline. That's the one sentence written expression of your idea. 2, we go to sketchbook. That's a collection of all your unsorted ideas and just some research materials and anything else that's relevant for your story before you begin. Story beats is going to be those major events of the story in the general shape and general order that they should go in. Scene cards is an expansion of story beats that provides a whole paragraph for each scene. And finally, we go to pages. This is an industry term you should learn and use. Go to pages means you go from pre-writing to actually writing, meaning actually formatting scenes, writing dialogue. Before we get to step 5, you don't have to even download screenwriting software. If you don't want, you can do almost all of this in Google Docs. What's a logline? So, your central conflict distilled down to a sentence. This is the answer to the question, what is this about? You want to imply visual action. Tell us, what is the inciting incident? So what is the thing that kind of kicks this journey off? Who is the main character? What do they want? What's in their way? What are the stakes? Meaning, essentially, it should be clear what happens if they fail. A ticking clock is some element that adds pressure and urgency to your character's situation as well. Here's some more on loglines. So, feature loglines and TV loglines work a little bit different. TV shows will have 2 separate loglines. One is for the series. That's going to focus more on the characters, the situation, and the story world that will comprise many different episodes. And it should clarify what your story engine is. A story engine being this kind of intangible combination of elements that feels like it will fuel further episodes. So if you don't have an adequate story engine, you might get questions like, how could this be more than one single episode? If you have a great story engine, then we're going to say things like, oh, I can totally see, 5 years of this or more. Pilot logline is going to be like a feature logline. It's going to be expressing what happens just in that first episode, inciting incident, protagonist, what do they want, what's in their way. So we'll have examples of both of these. Let's look at just the basic template first so you can write this down before we go further. This is what the pilot logline probably looks like. The series logline can be a little bit more broad and doesn't exactly have to follow this exact same format, but let's look at the pilot logline format. So, when or after inciting incident, an adjective, protagonist, must conflict before stakes. So it doesn't always have to be in this exact same format, but these are just a lot of the questions that we will have. So you should just make sure that you are answering these questions to the best of your ability, even if you aren't going to use this exact same sentence structure each time. You can almost always do this in one sentence. You do probably not need multiple sentences for a logline. Inciting incident is going to be the event that kicks the story off. This is going to be, when he finds a briefcase full of money, a guy goes on the run. But we don't want to just say a guy. You need to pick an adjective to describe your main character in order to highlight how this is their story. This is going to be the story of this person, usually struggling with or overcoming the adjective that you have listed for them, but maybe it's going to inform the unique tactic that they use or something. I mean, we could imagine the show Monk, right, is an OCD detective. He's a detective that he has obsessive compulsions that he's going to use in various ways to help him solve those crimes, for instance. So the adjective you pick should be pretty carefully chosen to highlight what is interesting about that character. What is a contradiction about that character, or something that causes conflict with that person? And maybe the show will be them struggling with that from episode to episode, or using that skill from episode to episode, or it will just be relevant in the show in some way. Conflict is going to be what the characters are doing. So usually there's going to be some kind of antagonist. Not always, but almost always there's an antagonist of some sort. And they pose some kind of problem, and they oppose your hero's goal. So they're going to directly act against your hero, achieving their goal. Stakes and ticking clock is, why do we have to do this? What's the urgency and motivation behind this? Like, what happens if your character fails or does not act? And then ticking clock is going to say, why does this have to happen now? Or why does this have to happen within, a week or within 5 years? I think that maybe looking at some examples of these will clarify these things as well. Let's move right to just look at a few examples, actually, before we talk about anything else. Do I have examples? Yes, I do. Okay. So let's look at a couple of these before we move any further, because I just want you guys to start sketching out ideas on your sketchbooks for what your loglines are going to be like. So let's check out some series loglines. We have a crime drama, we have 2 crime dramas, and we have a half-hour sitcom. So Ozark, this is one of my favorite series loglines because it just has everything. We have a description of the main character, a fast-talking financial advisor. Well, that tells us that's going to be the unique tactic that he uses to solve his problems, right? He's not the richest, he's not the strongest, he doesn't shoot his way out of situations. He's a fast-talking guy who's always going to come up with some clever solution or lie or trick to get them out of the dangerous situation that they're in. So that's why we've chosen that adjective to describe the main character, and you should pick your adjective similarly. He drags his family from Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks, so there's the unique setting or story world that the show is taking place in. He has to launder $500 million in 5 years, so laundering $500 million is the conflict of the show. You know, that comes with its own sort of various challenges that go along with it. You have to buy businesses that you can filter the money through and deal with criminals who are trying to steal it or trying to get in on his business or things like that. We can imagine different sorts of conflicts that might result from laundering that much money. In 5 years, that's a sense of the time frame or the ticking clock. You have 5 years to do this, and we might imagine that's the story engine that's going to provide us 5 seasons, more or less, worth of entertainment. To appease a drug boss is telling us the stakes. So that implies to us that if he does not appease this drug boss, then he and his family will be presumably killed or kidnapped by the criminals. So there's everything. That's everything, right? Adjective. Or we have the inciting incident. Or do we have the inciting incident? No, I guess the one thing we don't have in the series logline here is why now? Why does this happen? You could consider having something like when blank happens at the beginning just to inform us what kicks it off, but this one answers so many other questions it almost feels irrelevant. So we get the idea that he gets into some trouble, ends up in debt to a drug boss, needs to go to this unfamiliar location and be a fish out of water. He has a clear goal and a clear time frame in which to accomplish it. So, great series logline here. Can totally see all the elements that make this unique and make this work. I know who the main character is, what he's trying to do, what's standing in the way, and the tactics that he'll use to address that problem. Blackish is a sitcom, and sitcoms don't really have the same sense of goal to them, do they? It's like just a series of situations, but in that case, we need to just describe what kinds of conflicts and situations those will be. So, a black family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity while raising his kids in a predominantly white upper middle class neighborhood. So this is describing a bunch of situations. This is an episodic idea where the different episodes will revolve around scenarios linked to this idea of cultural identity. So you can see here how we haven't given us like he needs to get this much money by this time, but it tells us, okay, this is going to be a bunch of situations over many years which will all thematically revolve around this same sort of conflict. Last, we have Breaking Bad, which is another hour crime drama. A high school chemistry teacher, or we could say, when he's diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer, a high school chemistry teacher, we might even describe him as like a meek high school chemistry teacher, turns to manufacturing and selling meth to secure his family's future. Again, main character, inciting incident, and the thing that kicks this off, the clear conflict and tactic that he's going to use to approach this problem, and we get the motivation of why he's doing it too. So the emphasis in series logline is on interesting character, interesting world. If you have some clear sense of like goal or finish line to the story, like $500 million in 5 years, then you should include it. But if you don't, then you're going to have to frame what are the sorts of conflicts that your character is getting into. Let's look at pilot loglines, then I'll take questions. Pilot logline is going to be more like when or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else stakes. So it's going to feel like a movie logline, meaning we should more clearly understand what the finish line or the tangible goalpost is here. Avoid internal goals and stakes. It should be something like he must get over this grief, or they must think about this, or they must discuss this. The word discuss is very non-cinematic. You want to give us the sense of a tangible goalpost, even if this is going to be a drama which has character-based internal goals. If it's about somebody needing to get over a death or something like that, then maybe you frame this around, they're going to take a road trip and sprinkle the ashes at the top of this mountain or whatever, which we just understand the act of completing that external journey will be the act of completing the internal one. So you need to weave your internal journey with an external one really carefully. Do we have some pilot loglines on display here? Maybe not. That's okay. At least write down the template for this so that you're ready to start noodling away at this as we continue. I want to go about 10 more minutes on a couple things like genre before we start to post loglines, so you'll have a little time to work on this. I just wanted you guys to get those basics down and understand the difference between pilot and series. You don't have to have both or either of these done today, but if you have an idea for one or the other of them, this is a good time to just get that early guidance and feedback on it. Any questions so far?
I do.
Go ahead.
I was thinking over the Ozark logline, and maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but I know that for a fact, never mention any sort of, try not to mention any sort of names in your logline, even location names, or don't mention specific goals. Keep the goal, like, why say 500 million in 5 years? Why not just say amass a large amount of money in a short time?
Because this gives us a much clearer sense of how long the show is going to last and what the walls or boundaries on it are.
Hey, can you give me this many seasons when I pitched this show to you, or was this already like I don't know all the details.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know either. But
moving from Chicago to Ozarks, was that part necessary to mention? But it just say moving from a big city to the boonies.
You could, but the show is called Ozark. It's like really the sense of place is really key to what makes this show work. It's about the specific crime.
If you have a show named after a character, you still don't mention that character's name in the logline, right?
That character would be someone that we would have no way of knowing anything about, whereas the Ozarks are a real place. So it's a little different when you're talking about the sense of place is really key for series loglines. So if it actually does take place in a real region of the world, you absolutely 100% would want to mention the location. If you don't feel it's super key to the premise of the show, you may not absolutely need to. But if it is, and in this case, this is like they're smuggling drugs on boats through canals and stuff like that like you can only really do in the Ozarks. Right. So it's very much, it uses that location as a really key component of the central conflict of the show. Then the sense of place is really important. So you're right, you don't always have to mention this, but if it is important, then you can totally mention place names. People's names that we just don't know. If you're like, Jeff needs to drag his family from Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks, we're like, well, who is Jeff? We don't know. Jeff isn't somebody that we have any experience with, whereas this is something that actually exists. Historical periods too, so if you're like, this takes place in the Renaissance, then you definitely should mention that.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm a bit confused because with some log lines, I'm gonna use Stranger Things, for example. It states when a young boy disappears, his friends, his mother, and his like family must confront terrifying evil forces in order to get him back.
Mm-hmm.
But that main character, he got found at the end of that season. And
So,
for the rest
go ahead.
of the show, yeah.
So I was going to say the main character in Stranger Things is Mike. He's the kid that is like the sort of leader of the kids that are looking for the missing kid. The missing kid is not the main character in Stranger Things. So you'd probably frame it something like when his best friend goes missing, a suburban 12-year-old must gather his schoolmates and local adults to try to fight the terrible evil forces and get him back. So you frame it around the person who is the central protagonist of the show, the one who is acting and is being most active and has the most to lose and is sort of framed as the center of the narrative. Some shows it can be a little difficult to pick out who exactly is the main character, but pretty much all of them have, and like season to season maybe it even changes a little bit, but for the most part, at least I've seen season 1 of Stranger Things, Mike is the main character of it. So you'd frame it around him instead of the kid that goes missing. Good questions, though. Let's oh, thank you, Nacho. Nacho's posted an example of a Siri's logline in the chat about the specifics of the place. Why does Siri think I'm talking to Siri? Okay, let's do a little bit about the genres, and then we will post loglines. So just be typing away, be getting ready to post your loglines. I think Artemis just posted it, which is great. And if you have yours, you can leave it in the same chat, and we'll come back to it in a minute. But you have a minute to work on it more if you want. So let's look at genre before we post loglines. So you're going to have to pick genre for your show, meaning you want to limit this a little bit. You don't want to just say it's 5 different genres, as even though you might see all those nuances, or you might think, well, there's elements of Western, there's an element of crime somewhere in it. You have to limit this to just 2 things, or else people would just get confused and not know what it is. And it seems like you don't really know what it is if you pick more than 2 things. So any of these shows on here, we can easily define in just 1 or 2 of these at most. It gets a little tricky when you get to something like Supernatural, when it's like, that's like 4 different genres combined. But it's basically a fantasy mystery thriller show. I mean, there's elements of horror, there's elements of action-adventure. We have to just pick the most relevant things. So, Game of Thrones, fantasy drama. Big Bang Theory, comedy. Walking Dead, horror. How I Met Your Mother, comedy. You're not trying to add as many, like, it doesn't benefit you to add a bunch of other genres in there. Just pick the simplest explanation of what you're doing. Genre is a combination of expectations and tropes and an emotional experience that you're sort of trying to say that you are offering. And if you include too many flavors, it starts to just feel like flavorless soup. So don't pick more than 2 of these. There's procedurals, which are usually going to be police, medical, or legal, or some other institution like that. You can mention that it's a procedural if you want. Animated you can mention as well, but you're not going to write an animated show differently. The expectation will usually be that animated will be half an hour and either comedy or action adventure, but there's a lot of exceptions to that nowadays, so it doesn't strictly have to be that. But in general, animated shows will not be written that much differently than a live-action show. I think we can easily go through all of the shows in this list and at least say what the genres are. We have Californication, that's a dramedy. The Good Wife, I actually don't know that one. I think that's a dramedy. Simpsons, that's a comedy. Mad Men, historical drama. Pretty Little Liars is mystery thriller. Breaking Bad is crime drama. That says Dexter's... This makes me laugh every time how that says Dexter's Laboratory and not Dexter. But Dexter is a horror mystery thriller show. Bones is a crime mystery thriller show. American Idol is not a scripted show at all. That's a singing show. Glee is a dramedy, I guess. We don't really have a musical genre list, but then again, Glee's not really a musical, so... except, I guess, some episodes. It's mostly a dramedy. 24, action-adventure. 2.5 Men, comedy. True Blood, that's fantasy. Archer, that's comedy, action-adventure. Criminal Minds, that's crime. Castle is a crime procedural. Parks and Rec, sitcom. And Sons of Anarchy is crime drama. So there you go, easy, right? Like, we can just pick the 2 most relevant genres, even if you think that more might kind of apply in some kind of way. Does everybody have a kind of clear sense of how these genres work and what genre you might want to be writing in? Or does anyone have a question about a certain genre? These are kind of I'll get out of the way. These are kind of the options. Comedy, drama, crime, sci-fi, fantasy, and many people combine sci-fi, fantasy. Action-adventure, mystery thriller, and horror. So you can see a couple of those are even... Like, thriller isn't really a genre of TV show. It almost is always going to be lumped in with mystery. And, like, adventure, I'm not sure if most people would know what that is. Action-adventure makes the most sense. So some of these just have kind of mashed together over time. Sci-fi and fantasy I do keep distinct just because I know a lot about these genres, and I consider them very distinct, but some people don't. Everybody fully think they get genre and what genre they want to do? No questions about this? Okay, let's keep going. Let me see if there's anything else I want to go over. Yeah, let's go over before we do more on loglines, or before I do another slide on loglines, let me just talk briefly about format and continuity. So we'll post loglines right after this. So, different types of continuity formats. Premise shows versus status quo shows. I think we all have seen both of these, even if we didn't know the words for these things. And I'm not sure there even is one set of words that describes these things. I think premise pilot is pretty common, but excuse me. Status quo is a term that I mostly use because there wasn't another good term for this other kind of show as far as I know. So premise pilot is more like a long movie. That's like your Breaking Bad, your Lost, things like that, which we have to watch the episodes in order. You know, Game of Thrones, we have to watch them in order to understand the story. The characters change a lot over the course of multiple seasons. Status Quo shows, everything essentially resets to how it was before at the end of the episode. You can watch any episode in any order in any season and still generally follow the arc of it. The characters change very little or not really at all. In a show like The Simpsons, it's like they might change from season to season due to just the writers that are writing them at any given time, but it's not like they are a sum of all of the things that have happened to them, really. So Status Quo might be, in live action, it's usually going to be procedurals. Things like your Law & Order, CSI, legal or medical, like Grey's Anatomy is not exactly Status Quo, but like closer to it. This is pretty common in procedural and live action, and also cartoons, sitcoms, and things like that. Everybody think they understand the difference between these things? Artemis says Status Quo is like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, sitcoms are almost always Status Quo. There are a couple exceptions, like Abbott Elementary, which you can watch on HBO now, but I think was on NBC. I was actually surprised by how consistent the plotline is, and that like is bordering on premise show, but you know, it's still pretty much Status Quo. Tori says, got here late and catching up. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about different continuity formats, and soon we'll be posting log lines for feedback. Any questions about difference between premise and Status Quo TV shows? All right, if there's no questions, let's go to our logline portion. So, let me see. Let's go ahead and post loglines if you've got even an incomplete one. Do I have a good slide for this? And we will give you a little bit of that early feedback and maybe give you some suggestions. You can post either series or pilot. Just make sure you label which one of them it is. Here it is. So go ahead and post. Remember to include your title, genre, time slot, and series logline in the chat. Oh, I didn't mention time slot. Basically, your options are half hour or full hour. So you can do either a couple options for series logline. Roger is asking. Yes, you can post a few options if you're not sure which to go with, and we can help you out. So go ahead and post these guys. I'll give you a minute or two to do this, and then I generally look at them more or less in the order that they are posted. We can't guarantee we'll get to absolutely everyone. If it turns out there's a lot of them, we'll get to as many as we can. And if you're trying to decide between a few different ideas, this is also a fine time to ask which one you should go with. So while you guys are doing that, I'm going to bring up our shared document so we can mark these up. Oops. All right. I'm going to just leave our slides on the pilot logline format for just another minute if you guys need to write that down as well. We have a question in the chat. Is there a quick definition of what a logline is? Yeah, a logline is a one-sentence expression of the premise of the show. Most shows are going to have both a series logline and a pilot logline, two separate sentences, one which expresses what is happening over the course of the entire show, and one of which says, this is what's happening in the pilot. On the screen right now is the general template you can use for a pilot logline. If you scroll up in the chat, you'll also find a bunch of examples of these. Nacho has posted a bunch of example links. Can we pin that message to the channel? I don't think it's going to let me pin it for some reason. You can type the word !TV logline into the chat, and in any channel it'll bring up a bunch of examples for you. Thank you, Nasha. Looks like we've gotten Post from Roger and from Artemis. If anyone else has one they want to get feedback on, now is the time to post it. I'm going to start with our first one in just a minute, and as we are discussing, you can post yours and add them to the sort of queue. It does not have to be perfect. So Artemis, for yours, do you think you can update your post with title, genre, format, those things?
Sure, give me 1 sec.
So hour or half hour, premise or status quo.
You can start with Roger if you want while I put that together. I don't want to make everyone wait.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, we'll start with Roger. All right, we have a couple different options for this one. This is Goner. You say, I mixed in a couple ideas for protagonist and stakes. Artemis was ahead, but she's still updating hers, so we'll start with Roger. You ready to read this out, Roger?
Yes, please. I'm
All right.
sorry for the 2 options.
Oh, no, it's all good. Which one do you want to start with?
Option B is, I think option B of the series is probably the best one.
Okay, let's start with that one then. Can you read this out for us?
Sure, sorry. A college student with a criminal history possessed by an abrasive homicide detective must solve all his cold cases from the 1970s to put his soul at peace and be free of him.
All right. And you have the pilot, too.
Yeah. And
Okay.
this is me trying out a different protagonist. When a risk-averse poetry major stumbles on the crime scene of a murdered 1970s detective, his abrasive soul possesses her body. Despite her best efforts, she finds that the only way to be rid of him is to help him hunt down his family's killer before he kills again.
All right. Wait, so this is a different main character than the series
I
logline?
just was trying, I wanted your opinion, what's better, a college kid with criminal history or more of a risk-averse, meeker, someone who's really unqualified to pair up
Mhm.
with the ghost of a hard-boiled homicide detective. So it was just
Right.
kind
Okay.
of throwing it out for your opinion.
That makes sense.
Like
Okay.
risk-averse poetry major.
It's unique. I mean, that definitely gets some attention. Let me ask, what is the genre here?
Procedure. This should be a dark, supernatural procedural.
Okay, so maybe we could say fantasy/crime, I guess. That's sort of what you mean, right?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But I'm not going for comedy. I'm going for dark.
I see. Okay, yeah. So fantasy and supernatural pretty much mean the same thing here. So a college student with a criminal history, possessed by an abrasive homicide detective. See, the fact that she's possessed, to me, kind of takes precedence over the fact that she has a criminal history. Like, how does that actually play in, I guess would be my question.
I was trying to give her something that they can butt heads over and trying to find like a a quote-unquote superpower for, like, those are a fast-talking
Right.
financial guys. I was looking for my version of that. So,
But if it's a criminal history that would put her at odds with a homicide detective who's after serial killers, then I would think that, like, is it that bad, or is it like she's done some traffic tickets before? Like, what is it? What do we mean?
more like stealing to stay in school, and
Oh,
just like more.
I just can't see a detective whose prerogative is to hunt down serial killers caring that much about that. I don't see that. Like, is that gonna? He's like, now I can't possess you anymore because you, like it feels like we have bigger fish to fry. That this almost feels like you could pick something else to describe the main character. And I think you're right. Maybe think of what is the tactic that your character would use rather than just something in their past, because I don't think having done some stealing or something in the past tremendously influences the tactic that a character would use by default. So maybe think, like, is this a college student who, I don't know, is always using sort of underhanded tactics? Are they sort of sneaky? Is she sort of manipulative? Like, maybe just think, what was I trying to hint at with that criminal past that would inform how they act today? So maybe just think of
like
how
the
you would describe the character.
That was actually the goal, like manipulative, sneaky.
Okay. But the important thing is that I think the possession sort of overshadows a lot of this. So, possessed by an abrasive homicide detective, must solve all of his cold cases from the 70s to put his soul at peace and be free of him. Okay. I think I get it. I think I can see it. I was just kind of getting stuck on the first clause here with the description of the character. Let me read the pilot logline and double check here. So when a risk-averse poetry major stumbles on the crime scene of a murdered 70s detective, well, we wouldn't need to say the crime scene of, stumbles on a murdered 1970... Oh, wait, it is just the crime scene. Wait, but it's not an active crime scene if it was in the 70s, was it?
No, it's like the site of his murder, you know.
Okay.
It's like...
Stumbles upon the site of a detective's murder, right? His soul... An abrasive detective's murder. His soul possesses her body, and despite her best efforts, she finds the only way to be rid of him. There's just a lot of words here. Yeah. And to get rid of him, must help him hunt down his family's killer before he kills again, before the killer kills again. The little pronoun confusion there. Hunt down his family's killer before he kills again. Could be referring to either of them. But is he continuing to hunt down the detective's family, or is he just targeting random victims? I mean, this was 50 years ago, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I like the idea that that's a twist. This killer is like also a ghost that is, you know, can possess different bodies.
Oh, the killer's also a ghost.
It's going to be a twist.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Twists are like for logline purposes, it's more important that we hook a reader than we maintain a twist, or maintain the secrecy of a twist. So, his soul possesses her body. To get rid of him, she must help him hunt down his family's killer. Before he kills again. Okay, I think you're most of the way there. I can definitely see it. Just look into how you're describing the main character, and maybe you're going to want to make sure it's consistent between the pilot and series loglines. I guess we have to decide what's more important for the character. Is she more risk-averse? And this is going to be the journey of her... Like, ask yourself, this is the journey of her going from what to what? Blank to blank. And if it's going to be the journey of her... And it could be a very slow journey. I mean, TV is about very gradual change, right? But is this more about her opening up to dangerous adventures / experiences? Or is this going to be... Go ahead.
Sorry, what I liked was maybe she was the victim of a crime, and that she has her own PTSD and is not confronting people, not confronting her past, not confronting the people who hurt her, maybe.
Okay.
You know,
maybe needs to, like, take control of her life a little more?
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. I would maybe use that, because remember, it's a possession story, so the idea that you need to take control of your own life could be really tied in with that idea. Like, we can start to... If you sort of make sure that your main character is like, it's really clear why it's this main character, right? It's somebody who needs to take control of their life, and the only way that she could sort of do that in this story world is somebody else does it for her and sort of shows her, oh, you need to be the one to take control. So I think that might be the stronger angle, rather than just saying she's manipulative, because, like, we kind of wonder, once you're possessed, how manipulative can you be exactly? Or it just becomes a little unclear how that would play in necessarily. I would maybe go with this thing where she needs to... Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Connor, is it unclear that she's, like, co-inhabiting, you know, like Moon Knight, switching off or working together, you know, not just her being under his absolute control, but, like...
I would say that is not really clear in the logline, no. So normally, I guess when you say someone is possessed, there's a couple different versions of what that could mean, just because different cultures and different practices mean... Possession just means different stuff, right? It could mean that, like, in sort of the Exorcist terms, you get possessed and then slowly the demon takes control of you over time until it just is you. Or it could mean that it's directly puppeting all of your actions from the moment that it takes control, like the mind control version. I think maybe you could do, if you're saying, if we're, co-inhabiting, that would maybe be a good way to put it, yeah. So this is, like, the possessor is like a passenger, and can he control her or no?
times.
At times, okay. So wrestling for control of her own body is the sort of idea here. Okay, cool. Yeah, so maybe Moon Knight would be a good comp. I haven't seen Moon Knight yet, but I get the idea. Yeah, maybe you could clarify that in the logline a bit. But this is looking good. I mean, this is I have not seen a show exactly like this before. It's a fun setup. The idea that we have to, it's almost, what is it? Like one of these list shows, right? Because she has a bunch of, it's like you have to arrest all these criminals and then you get to get rid of the ghost, right? Like My Name is Earl style. You ever see
There you
that?
go. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
That was a handy show, or that was a handy device for that show, right? Because it was sort of like, yeah, my list has, however many entries on it we need. I think for something like this, we would probably need to more strictly define it. I mean, if he just has an endless list that we're just like, oh god, 5 years, 10 years, how many years is it going to take to get through this? It might be a little harder to buy that somehow. So maybe you just need a much more limited number. It's like these 5 serial killers that I never got. They're just going to feel more important if it's a more limited list. If it's like, well, I didn't get all these people, then it's not going to actually seem like any of them were that bad for the most part. Does that make sense? But if it's like the 3 killers that I can never track down, that just feels more important. Scarcity creates a sense of importance. Maybe you could even mention that in the logline too, like the 3 or 5 or 10 or however many. Like those were the cases that got away from him, and that's maybe, I guess you're sort of saying that's why the ghost has remained, right? Because he was never able to solve them. Okay, I'm with you. I like it. Maybe Moon Knight meets Deadbeat. You ever watch Deadbeat on Hulu? It's kind of like that, but it does have a comedic tone. So maybe you want to pick some other ghost show that doesn't involve comedy.
And then it was just tricky because it's hard to have a lot of serial killers or bad guys out there who are still active 50 years later.
Yeah, that is another potential problem. Well, how are you solving that, do you think?
I was going to think that after this first one, she goes off and solves a different serial killer every season.
But then, so there's no like he's just possessing her forever at that point? Does she have any kind of end game to it?
Or it was a family of serial killers.
Oh, okay. Or maybe it's a cult. Like a cult can easily last 50 years, can't it?
I love a cult. I was going to ask that.
Maybe think along those terms. Something that it wouldn't just require random people that happen to be alive 50 years later. It's more like there was some, or maybe even maybe this could be like sort of a development at the end of the pilot. We're like, wait, these aren't just all random killers. Like, or maybe we arrest somebody and it seems like, wait, I thought this was the same killer from 50 years ago, but it turns out it's just somebody else using the same method because it's part of some larger cause or something like that. That might really help you with the story engine. This is what we're talking about with story engine. Story engine would be, how can this continue past just a single episode? Does that give you some good stuff to think about? Any big questions on this?
Oh, that's great. I can take all that and think about it. I appreciate that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, you have a great start here, and you have a series and pilot logline, so you're almost there. Just try to solve those last couple problems, clarify the story engine, describe the main character in such a way that we can really see this is going to be the journey of this girl going from this way to this way over time. It doesn't have to be right away, but over time it will be her taking more control of her life, probably. And I think you're pretty much all set.
So much.
Thank you. All right, let's do some more. Who else has one that they've posted? Artemis, do you want to go now?
Sure, thank you.
Did you post an updated version on the comments? Oh yeah, I see it. Okay. Can you read this out for us?
Yes. So, genre, dramedy, premise, format, I'm still not sure, but more likely movie. Comps, My Big Fat Freak Wedding meets Sweet Home Alabama, which is a movie, meets Sex and the City. And logline. After her parents die in a freak accident, free-spirited Artemis Palace becomes the unexpected and sole heiress to the family's estate, putting her at odds with her older sister, quirky hometown, and the one decision she has been avoiding her whole life. Tyler.
All right, thanks for this. Let me read this one more time. So this is a dramedy, and we're not sure on time slot or if it's a movie and premise. Okay, so after her parents die in a freak accident, free-spirited. So this would be one of those cases where we just don't need to know the character's name unless it's a real person or a historical figure. So you want to describe the character in terms of adjective, noun. A free-spirited, teenager, or however you would think of. Like, you can describe people in multiple ways. You can describe them by their job. You can describe them by their relationship. Go ahead.
The kind of key thing with her is that she's about to be 40. So I don't know if I could put that in, I don't know what word to use there, but...
I'm not sure either.
Well,
You might just need to do some... Yeah, that doesn't quite feel right. I see your dilemma. You might just need to do some more thinking before you can determine the exact right term to use for her. Let's read the rest of it. So she becomes the unexpected and sole heiress to the family's estate, putting her at odds with her older sister, quirky hometown, and the one decision she's been avoiding her life. So it's a little ambiguous for a logline. What's the one decision that she's been avoiding?
Whether to be a mother.
Whether to be a mother. Okay. So you're saying her potentially getting all this money is affecting her decision to be a mother. How? Positively or negatively?
I guess she feels more pressure to make the decision now, whereas up until now, she's kind of just been coasting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that she's inherited, it's basically a mansion. They're leaving her the family home. And now it's like, okay, she sort of has to decide what path she's going to go down as far as either becoming a mother or, being child-free.
So does she have a partner?
Not at the moment. Not when the thing starts. She's single when the thing starts.
So framing the decision about her parenthood in a situation where she's single just seems a little strange to me. I think that you would maybe put this in a logline if she was already with somebody and they were talking about having a kid or something like that. But it seems like she's got other priorities to work on before the kid thing. I mean, just if your character is single,
that's why I put
go ahead.
It last. That's why I put it last, and that's why I didn't name it.
Okay, I would probably cut it for now. And it can be in the pilot, but just in terms of a logline, maybe just leave it out because it leads me to believe, she's getting ready to have a kid and isn't sure if she wants it or not, when the fact is she doesn't even have a boyfriend. So, but I mean, not that it would be super hard to get one if you're a billionaire. Okay, so her parents die in an accident. A free-spirited woman becomes the heir. Well, is she the heiress or she just inherits it? She gets all the money right away, right? And the houses and everything from the parents?
Right. So she gets everything and her sister doesn't get nothing.
So I would just say she inherits the family's estate. She's the family's estate. There we go. And they're a wealthy family, right?
Right.
Inherits her wealthy family's estate. Putting her at odds with her older sister and quirky hometown. I think that would be a solid series logline. For the pilot logline, you're going to want to tell us more what happens in the first episode. So the pilot logline might be something like, it might start a little bit of the same way because it's the same inciting incident for the series and for the first episode. But her parents die in an accident, this woman inherits this money, and now she needs to she has to make sure the funeral is running well, all the while being badgered by her brother, her sister, and these. We just want to describe more what happens specifically in this first episode. So it might be about the funeral, or it might be about try to pick a conflict that this really resolves around, and that would help this out for a pilot logline. But this series logline I think is working quite well. I could easily see how somebody unexpectedly inheriting tons of money is going to lead to lots of problems in the community and with her other remaining family. Especially, you're saying the sister was cut out of the will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I can see lots of conflict there. I totally get the series logline. I guess, did you want feedback on whether or not you thought this would be a better movie or show?
Sure.
So this could go either way. I guess you should ask, does this feel like I can do everything I want to do in 2 hours? Or does this feel like I'd really want to theoretically see every step of this and explore this over the course of many years? And I guess it just is going to come down to what's the version you're more excited about, and where do you want your career to go? Do you want to be more of a feature writer or more of a TV writer? Because this story definitely has enough legs that it could be I think it could be either. So I can see the dilemma because it just fits in both formats. So you just have to ask, what do you like? What do you like more? I mean, do you think the ending is super important to what you want to do with this, or do you not even know the ending yet?
That's interesting. No, I don't know the ending.
Okay.
I guess my question is, I don't have any experience in this industry, and I think that with just one pilot kind of being a nobody, it feels like it would be virtually impossible to get into the TV world. So I'm just also trying to think practically, so that's why I'm leaning towards the movie direction. It just seems like it would be better, the odds are more in my favor if I take it in the movie direction.
They are. So it's really important for you to get this actually made, I guess would be a good question to ask.
It is.
It is. Okay. Then in that case, don't do a pilot, because it's just not going to get made. Pilots are what we're writing as samples so we can get a manager, so we can get staffed on a show, and then maybe after years of that, you can maybe start to pitch your own shows. So you could write it as... Not interested in that. Okay, so movie would probably be the way to go. I mean, really what you want to do is write it as a book probably, or a play probably first, and then you'll just maintain full control of it, because with a movie, even you aren't still the final control. You don't have full control over it. But movie would be much closer towards your goals, I think. And if you could set it up with an independent filmmaker or something, then you could actually theoretically get it made.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, but feel free to stick around the rest of class and maybe just... We have only half an hour left of this one, so maybe this will give you some ideas just to hear the rest. But we also... feature class Fridays from 6 to 8 Pacific. It just started, so it's not too late to join.
Okay.
Thanks for this. All right. Let's keep going. Dan says, I didn't understand the A and B logline idea. Might have missed that. No, that was not a thing we went over in class. That was just Roger coming up with a couple alternate takes on his loglines. We have... Who's next? Do we have JK next? Did anyone else post? No. Okay, let's do JK with the boy and the alien. Are you there, JK?
Oh, yes, I am. Oh, hello.
Hi. Do you want to read this logline for us, please?
So, like the concept. So with the logline, it's basically it's my series logline for a sci-fi and horror pilot that I'm planning to do. This is the series. This is kind of a mix of the series and pilot logline, but I'm gonna call it a series logline.
Okay.
For now. Yeah.
Do you want to read it out, the logline out loud for us?
Okay. Okay. When an alien lands on Earth and warns him about an impending alien invasion, a depressed, suicidal teen and his friend must put their differences aside with the creature and team up in order to prevent the fate of planet Earth.
All right, thank you for that. So, when an alien lands on Earth and warns him about an impending alien invasion, a depressed suicidal teen and his friend must put aside their differences with the creature. I guess let me ask, what is their problem with the creature? Didn't the creature just come and tell them about the invasion? Why would they have any issues that they would need to work through with the creature itself?
So over the course of the journey, I wanted to add conflict between the creature and the boy and his friend. So what I mean by that, is they reach a point where they have major disagreements, because remember, the creature is from another planet. So it's like their motivations kind of clash during the duration.
Okay, so you might want to clarify how those motivations are clashing exactly here. I mean, all we have is alien shows up on Earth and warns people about the invasion, teams up with the kids. Where is the conflict coming from between them? What does the creature actually want? Right now, it seems like they want the same thing. Don't they want to save the Earth?
Yes. They do want the same thing. But the creature, itself, is very too focused and is willing to do anything to save the. I actually need to think more about that.
Okay, yeah, it's okay to not have all the answers right now. This is just week 0. But maybe just ask yourself, like, what, does it eat people? Like, do they have to keep it a secret because it's eating people? Or is it, if you say it's willing to do anything, like, maybe it's killing, or, you could think if it's dangerous in some way to them, or if it's, like, it's going to cause them to get arrested if they even have it. I imagine, with sort of E.T., Stranger Things kind of vibe. The government's looking for it and stuff, so that puts them in danger to have it around. I could imagine that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
What I try to do is this alien is kind of friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise tries to humanize the alien because the alien comes from a backstory, from his old planet, which got like corrupted. The antagonist is the alien invasion.
But that's what. How are we? But like, who's opposing the main character's goals from episode to episode? It's okay to if you're not sure yet, you can just say I need to think about it more. It's early on, so.
Okay. So with the aliens, they are searching for the alien.
Mm-hmm.
That came to Earth.
Right. Okay. So are there other aliens on Earth?
No.
No.
No. This one alien landed on the planet.
Okay. So maybe just try to give us a sense of, in the next version of this, try to clarify who's the antagonist. Like, we say we have to team up to prevent the destruction of the planet. What does that actually look like? Does that mean your main characters are going to be sneaking into government facilities? Do we have to break into Area 51? Are we having to avoid, getting kidnapped by the FBI? Like, think of what are we actually going up against? What are the obstacles? Try to clarify that. Okay. This is definitely a good foundation for a show. I think this would be the series logline here. So try to come up with a revised version of this and with a pilot logline for next time, in which case the pilot will be much more specifically what happens in the very first episode.
Okay.
All right, thank you for this. Any questions on this? No questions? Okay, we'll go to the next one. Thank you for sharing. Let's see. How many more do we have? Do we have 2 more? 1 more? We have Space Dogs. We have 1 more. All right, let's do Space Dogs with Dan.
All right. Space Dogs. Genre, action, adventure, sci-fi. Comps, Star Wars, Bucky O'Hare. He's also going to want to put, like, one of my other inspirations, but I wasn't sure if I should, because it is not a TV or movie type series.
Is it a video game or something?
Star Fox, yeah.
Oh,
Can
Star
I put
Fox.
that?
I don't
Can you put
think
that, or can you
so.
not?
I
Could you
mean,
not?
sometimes I for this one I would not really put Star Fox. I mean, are your main characters animals?
Yeah.
They are. Okay, then
Bucky
maybe.
O'Hare covers that aspect pretty
I don't know,
well.
Bucky. What is Bucky O'Hare?
It's an old cartoon about,
Oh,
Space Rabbit.
a space rabbit. Okay, I never heard of this. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I was gonna say Star Fox would give me the impression that the characters were animals, but if they actually are, then maybe that is a decent idea.
Okay.
So yeah, up to you. I never heard of this guy, but I was thinking you meant Buck Rogers. I was like, oh, I get it, but no, it's a rabbit. Okay, so yeah, up to you on that one.
All right. Mysterious logline. A lazy pilot must rebuild his father's fleet and take the fight to the empirical madman looking to control the galaxy.
Okay.
Pilot logline. A lazy pilot riddled with daddy issues wishes to build a star fleet to avenge his father, but the major who leads the academy will give no such privilege until his grades improve.
All right, thanks for that. So, action, adventure, sci-fi. This is gonna be like a space combat kind of show, right?
Yeah.
I'm with you. I
Star
love this kind of thing. Sure. Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica is a great space combat show.
More of an animated show. Oh, in fact, I think it has to be.
Unless they're gonna do giant puppets like Farscape.
I don't think I want any. I don't know that. I'm not going to really have people wearing fursuits.
Okay. So this is probably a cartoon. That's fine. A lazy pilot must rebuild his father's fleet and take the fight to the empirical madman. Let's define the word empirical real quick. Based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observation and experience.
Empirical with an I.
Oh, okay, with an I. Let's define that in that case. I don't think it's a word.
Oh, I probably meant imperial.
Imperial, maybe? Yeah. In that case. You mean he's part of an empire, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you would say emperor, the mad emperor, perhaps?
Imperialist.
Mad imperialist? Okay, sure. Looking to control the galaxy. Okay, a lazy pilot. Is this a comedy?
No, he's lazy because his father is this big, famous person, and he's kind of trying to ride his laurels and coattails and all that stuff. He wants to be seen as something. He wants to be seen as something big and important because of this. But at the same time, he doesn't like being in the shadow. It's like this weird dichotomy that I don't know how to describe. You get what I mean, though?
I'm not sure yet. Let me ask a couple more questions, maybe. So, when you
He
say...
wants,
Go
he
ahead.
doesn't. His father is cold to him because he's like, "Can I just join your big crew already?"
Mm-hmm. Is your
So
main
I-
character competent or incompetent?
He is actually competent.
He's
a good pilot. He's just hot-headed. He can get in over his head. His ego can get in the way.
These are probably better words. Hot-headed, egocentric, arrogant, something like that. A lazy pilot sounds like a comedy character to me. That's like going to, especially
And I meant
if
to say, he's not
go ahead.
like lazy. He's more like he's a coattail rider. He's
Okay.
trying to ride on the success of his father.
Okay, so what would he prefer? Like, what is he doing instead of? I guess how would we describe his personality in that case? You might just have to try to find a trait that is going to sound like something that's going to be coming up a lot throughout the show that the character is maybe struggling with. But lazy tells me that he's not that good at being a fighter pilot, probably. I would pick one of the other words that you were using to describe him, and I think those are going to do a lot more for you.
All right.
Maybe, yeah, I think if he's arrogant, then he just hopes that his family's success can carry over to him, right? Something like that, maybe. Just I would look for a different word there. He must rebuild his father's fleet.
Like one note, like, oh, I'm only about riding coattails. Or no, I want kind of people to realize that this character has layers. I don't want anyone to be like, ugh, great, a one-note character with a logline. Into the trash this goes.
Well, we only have so many words to use, so nobody's going to think that the character is going to be one note just because you only have one adjective to spend on them. Don't worry too much about that. Ask yourself, why does he only want to ride people's coattails? Is it because he is, full of himself? Is it because he thinks he doesn't need to do the work? Like, just ask yourself what trait would be motivating that. He must rebuild his father's fleet and take the fight to the mad imperialists looking to control the galaxy. Okay, I get the series logline. Let's look at the pilot logline. A lazy pilot riddled with daddy issues. I like that. Wishes to build a starfleet. So wishes to does not sound like that strong of a start to a logline to me. Build a starfleet to avenge his father, but the major who leads the academy will give him no such privilege until his grades improve. Wait, isn't this an action-adventure show?
Yes, but it starts... Well, there is action-adventure, lots of space training.
Oh, we're only doing training in the first episode?
Kind of?
You wouldn't
I'm not
think
sure.
that... We gotta do... This is a space battle show, I would think that in the pilot we gotta do space battles.
To the point, like, this is where the pressure is building up, and then episode 2, bam, now we're in space, and now we're going on adventures, and now everything is going on. This episode 1 is like where the dominoes are set up so everything can fall apart. You know what I mean?
I see your thinking, but it's a big mistake, because you're not going to get a second episode. A pilot is like a writing sample. Nobody's going to read past the pilot. The pilot has to be representative of what the show will be. And that's the big difference, like, because sometimes on TV we'll see that. We'll watch Band of Brothers, and that's a war show. And the first pilot, in the first episode, they're just in basic training the whole time. They don't actually go to the war. But that was a Steven Spielberg produced show that knew they were going to get a full miniseries out of it. It's not us who we have to have this pilot stand on its own and act like this is our sample that represents what a show could be if I were in charge of one. So you have to make the first episode feel like the rest of this is going to give us the experience of the show. You shouldn't do just training for the first episode of the war action adventure show. So for the pilot logline, I think you need to find some action adventure stakes. It needs to feel like it's an exciting start.
I'm thinking of having action adventure stakes where there's cut-tos between the two, between him and his father, to get a good contrast of the kinds of personalities they are. His father on a mission and him training, no?
But then the main character is not actually involved in any action in the pilot? See how it's a problem? So it's like saying, this is going to be a comedy show about a bunch of friends who hang out, but the whole episode just follows one guy until he finally meets them at the end of that pilot. Wouldn't that feel like we sort of misrepresented what the show was in the logline? Because it's like, oh, no, that's later. That's coming later. We can't really do that because it sucks. I know it sucks, but this is just the...
So now everything that I thought I've known is kind of just thrown out the window.
Or blasted out the airlock, we could say.
Something like that. The point is that I have no idea now, because I was always under the impression episode 1 should be the getting everything together stage.
It is.
You don't start out with the whole, oh, suddenly we're here at the final boss.
But so have you seen Breaking Bad, for instance?
I have.
You have. So you remember the pilot of that?
Does start with him. He doesn't start knowing he has cancer. He doesn't start as a druggie. There's that little teaser at the, what's the term? Teaser?
Cold open
at the start that really kind of gives you a sense of whoa. But
so what we're in the Breaking Bad pilot.
It's more like getting to know the character phase, getting to know our characters. He doesn't start out as friends with the other guy.
No, it happens in the pilot though. So it's not. It's like we're not waiting till the end of the episode for him to say, you know what I should do? I should become a meth dealer. No, he actually does that in the pilot. He gets to know. We still see the events fall into place, but we're still doing the kinds of stuff that we're promising are going to be the main action of the show. Within the pilot, he gets diagnosed with cancer. He meets Jesse. He starts cooking meth. some gangsters start to try to rob them. They end up having to trap those guys in the back of their RV and poison them to death. And then we end up with that great police chase at the end, or what he thinks is a police chase, as they're riding the RV out into the desert. That, you're right, we do hint at the cold open. So we are actually doing a lot of the drug dealing.
That he drops out of the training academy so he can make this fleet.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Even against the will of the major, who he has massive amounts of respect for.
I like this.
He doesn't trust or think a lot about a lot of things, but he is propagandized to heck that the military can do that this military can do no wrong.
I love that. Okay, so I think you're onto something now. So drops out of training is a great idea for a pilot, because then we could still do the sort of introduction stuff. We can still learn, this is this war, this is your role in it, this is what you're supposed to be doing. But then if he abandons or leaves that and then actually gets involved in the action, because maybe we could tie that into his flaw, right? He's hot-headed, he's arrogant, he doesn't think he needs the major or the other soldiers or the training of the academy, whatever it is, then I think you're going to get people a lot more excited for the show. But I think yeah, that's probably the right way to be thinking about this. Even if we have a little bit of that training, a little bit of that setup in this episode, we should still get to the action adventure that you've promised, because we're just not going to get more episodes. Like, we will never get to those space battles unless you give us something in the script. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, let me just write that. How would I
summarize
that?
This is big.
Make sure to get to the primary action of the show in the pilot. The whole thing can't be set up. And that should just go for everybody. So this is not just for Dan, but try to make sure that if you're doing show about this thing happening, that thing happening should not be at the very end, because then it didn't really describe the episode that came before it. So you need to make sure that you are delivering a representative sample of what the rest of the show will be, even within that first episode, even if it's only a little bit of it. Like, we're not going to it's not going to be wall-to-wall space battles, but we should get to some kind of space battles in the action-adventure space battle show in the pilot. I mean, different shows do this in different ways, and I know that it's tricky because sometimes you see a show that seems to violate this, but as pilot writers, we're not going to get more episodes. We have to get used to this idea that we have to deliver the goods in the first one. We can't say, trust me, I would eventually get to something very cool later. We have to show that we can do that now in a self-contained way, as self-contained as possible, while still feeling like there's room to go afterwards. There's tarmac for the plane to go on in future episodes.
I was kind of hoping originally to ride on the idea that I'm introducing all these interesting characters with interesting stories and interesting nuances and dynamics, and was hoping, if these characters are interesting enough, we'll want to see them get into cockpits.
You might be right, but for a pilot, in order for it to be an effective pilot, we still need to see some of the stuff you promised, I guess is how I would describe it. But yeah, you should absolutely focus on making them compelling, interesting characters, and making characters we care about. We will be interested in reading more about them, for sure. Thank you for sharing this. So I think that was the last one that we had to work on today. Thank you for sharing this image of a sheep making meth, Paul. Let's leave our last 5 minutes open for questions. What would you guys like to know? What do you feel like you are still wondering after having been in this class? Any questions about the boot camp or questions about TV writing or screenwriting for our last few minutes here? You can feel free to either unmute and speak out loud, or you can type your question in the text channel for the classroom. Paul says it's from Zootopia. Oh yeah, isn't there, there's another sheep too. Isn't there like a Jessie sheep as well? There's definitely a Breaking Bad reference in Zootopia. Other questions? What would you guys like to know? What are you wondering about? Artemis says, once the scripts are finalized, do you offer any tips on how to pitch or find producers, etc.? We did a pitching boot camp, yeah. So there's recordings of that in the video library. We did 4 weeks on it. We had Scott Barkant on, who's another pro screenwriter. It was a really great course, so I would check that one out. We don't help you find producers, though. We are usually we're focused on the writing craft, because it takes people, I mentioned before, an average of 10 years before they are good enough to even begin getting meetings in screenwriting. I have not seen that many exceptions to that. So expect this to be, it will not be just a one and done, write a script, find a producer kind of thing. You're going to have to like really, really, really build your skills before you get to that point. Unless you blow everyone's minds. I mean, feel free to blow everyone's minds if you can. Tori says, I missed most of the session. Does it make sense to continue? Yeah, Tori, this was week 0. We have week 1 is the next class. So that one will still have some introductory things, and we'll recap a couple of the major points from this. This is a 6-week program, so the next 6 weeks will be all this class. And we can definitely, I recommend people join before the end of the 2nd week, but you can totally join up to week 1. You can join week 2. If you're joining at week 3, I think that's a bad idea. But yeah, no, you can. It's totally not too late to join. Tori asks, am I really behind? No, you're not that behind. Some folks didn't even have a logline ready today. We went over some of the basics. Here's my recommendation for you. You can just find this class recorded on YouTube after this class ends, or even right away, and you can watch back to get the major points that you missed, because this one is a free public one, and they go out on all our streaming platforms, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, so you can just watch everything you missed. Sorry, it sounds like somebody's talking. Does somebody have a question?
Disappointing step to a luxury low quality.
I'm not sure if I can hear what this user is saying. Maybe that was just background sound. Sounds like a TV is on, actually. Okay, not a question. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Thank you, Tori. We're glad to have you. I hope that you don't feel like you're too behind. You're definitely not. Don't worry. People join after the first class all the time. Last questions, last topics before we finish. There's a poll in the chat. If you click the number 1 in that poll, you will be given instant access to all our chat channels. That just indicates that you intend to sign up. We can wrap up now if there's nothing else. Let me give you guys a look at what to do for next time. So, do I have it? Yeah, here we go. So, revise your series and pilot logline based on what you heard and learned today. You also need to read a professional pilot script for next class, beginning to end, cover to cover, and just be ready to talk about it. There's not discussion questions, there's no right or wrong answers, but you just should be ready to say, this is what I read, this is what I liked and learned, this is what I didn't like, or this is what I was wondering at the end of it. We have a lot of different scripts for you to find. If you go to this TV writing, what is it called? Here it is. There's a Google group for TV writing that has tons and tons of scripts on it. You can choose from things that have been made or things that have not been made. You can pick from US comedy, US drama, or UK. There's plenty of options of things to read. I would pick something you have not seen that has come out within the past 5 to 10 years, ideally. You can pick drama, comedy, sci-fi, whatever you want. They have a ton of animation on here too. There's many things to read. You can pick half hour or full hour, but just read a full script for next class. Any questions on what to do for next time? All right, if there's no questions, we will wish you all a great rest of your weekend, and we hope to see you next time. This will be happening for the next 6 weeks. Sundays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. We also have Feature Bootcamp. That's Fridays, 6 to 8. And we have Novel Bootcamp. That's Saturdays, 12 to 2.
Hey guys, yeah, so anyone who, I'm not sure if you were able to see where to vote yes in the poll, if you weren't able to do that, but you do plan to join, you can just, type something or just let us know, and you can get immediate access to all the bootcamp channels.
Thanks so much, guys. We're going to wrap up for now, but message me or Nacho. Nacho is our great co-founder who teaches many classes and activities around here. Send a message to me, Conor K, or Nacho if you have more questions, or you can email connor@scriptcamp.net, and we can help you guys out. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a great rest of your Sunday. We hope to see you soon.